You ever have one of those mornings where the first thing you see is a violation notice frozen to your front door, and you just know it's going to be one hell of a day? Yeah, welcome to winter at Shaw Lake. Folks always say winter hushes everything. But let me tell you, sometimes that silence is just the calm before a storm, and this one was heading straight for me. They said I couldn't fish on my own damn lake. They said the HOA was claiming it as community property, right as they were planning their grand winter festival on ice I've known since I was a kid, back when nobody even thought to fence it in or write up a rule book. Picture this. Sun not even up yet, breath fogging in the cold, me sitting out on that ice with my dad's old fishing rod, just like I did when I was little. That lake, 12 inches of solid ice beneath me, old memories layered up thicker than the snowdrifts at the shoreline. My dad bought this lake for $4,200 back in '62, and he taught me to fish here before I ever learned to ride a bike. That lake was our legacy, ours and nobody else's. But silence only lasts so long. Suddenly, I hear the sharp click of heels that got no business being on frozen water, and in strides Victoria Thornton, HOA president, self-appointed queen of Lakeview Pines, wrapped up in a wool coat, clutching a yellow slip of paper like it's the Ten Commandments. She stares me down, voice cold enough to freeze pond water, and says, "Mr. Walsh, you're in violation of Regulation 14B. All fishing on community waters requires board approval." She drops that notice on the ice like a gauntlet and glides off, heels tapping out a countdown I could feel in my bones. I sat there for a long time, reading that slip, $500 for unauthorized activity, as if my dad's name wasn't carved into that deed with his own hand. But what really caught my eye, they'd only written that rule 9 days earlier. 9 days, just in time to stop me before their winter festival rolled in. No notice, no vote, just Victoria flexing her power, hoping nobody would call her bluff. Back at my place that afternoon, I found a second envelope in the mailbox, official-looking, heavy with threat. They'd passed a resolution in some emergency session, demanding I sign over usage rights to the community or face legal action. No notice, no chance to speak up. Victoria was moving fast, trying to get all this squared away before anyone could push back before the festival. That night, I did what I should have done long before. I had dug out my father's old chest from the basement, the one I hadn't touched since his funeral. I went through every yellowed scrap of paper until I found what I needed. The original HOA charter from 1987, with a clause in Section 4.2 saying, "Clear as day, Shaw Lake was private property outside HOA governance." Victoria hadn't just overstepped. She'd broken the very rules that gave her that little badge of authority. A couple days later, another certified letter lands on my porch. Emergency meeting, another resolution, another threat. They'd voted to come after me for the whole lake through adverse possession. If I didn't sign, they'd sue and stick me with every dime of legal fees. No notice, no agenda, no way for me to show up or defend myself. And Victoria's own daughter, Meredith, had been the only no vote, labeled as conflicted, right in the minutes. I spent the next 6 hours on my computer, reading up on Minnesota law. I used to be an environmental engineer, so legalese doesn't scare me. It just makes me mad. Turns out, their whole adverse possession plan was a joke. Minnesota says you need 15 years of hostile use, meaning use without the owner's permission. My dad had given the community permission at a barbecue in 2016, right before he died. They'd even thanked him for it. That single act erased any legal claim they thought they had. Next morning, I called up Frank Hollister, retired real estate attorney, 3 streets over, the quiet guy who grows tomatoes and plays chess. I told him everything. He was silent for a beat, then said, "Connor, this isn't just pushy. It's actionable. The HOA can't do what they're trying to do, and they know it." Frank offered to help, so I brought over every scrap of paper I had. We spent hours at his kitchen table, piecing together the story. Frank pointed out what I'd already seen. Section 4.2, the original deed, all crystal clear. The lake was ours, always had been. Victoria either didn't bother to check, or she thought she could bluff her way through it. And the fines, the threats, the whole charade, they were just legal intimidation. Most folks would fold, sign the agreement, and pray the lawyers would go away. But not me, and not Frank. We got the official records from the county, deed, survey, every plat map from the 60s. I even found an old photo of my dad, standing on the North Shore, next to a sign reading, Private Property, Shaw Family. Pete Galloway, my neighbor who used to work for the county assessor, remembered redrawing the plat lines himself to keep our lake out of HOA hands. He even found that old sign still half buried in the brush. But Victoria wasn't about to give up. She ramped up the pressure, tripled the fines, suspended my voting rights, threatened a lien on my whole property. Social pressure started fast. Neighbors who used to wave now looked away. At the store, folks who used to ask about my tomatoes now hurried past me. I overheard kids saying I was stealing the lake. Even Sophie, 8 years old, asked me if I was a bad person. I told her, no, sweetheart. I just want folks to ask before they use what's not theirs. She thought about it, shrugged, and ran off. Kids get it better than adults sometimes. Frank and I decided to fight this our way, a silent counterstrike. No shouting, no angry letters. We built a bulletproof case and waited for the right moment. Meanwhile, Victoria took her fight public, posted a rant on the community message board, painting me as a selfish villain out to ruin everything. By the end of the day, 300 people had liked her post. 90 wanted me gone. That was the worst part. Not the money, not the legal stuff, but seeing folks you'd helped jumpstart their car or given tomatoes to suddenly think you were the enemy. But I wasn't about to fold. Not after all my dad had taught me about sharing, but also about standing your ground. When the annual HOA meeting rolled around, the place was packed. Victoria made her pitch, tugged every heartstring she could find. Kids on the ice, charity money, community traditions. Then she called for a vote to take my lake by force. I stood up, folder in hand, and finally showed everyone the truth, deed, survey, the CCNR, every document certified by the county. Victoria tried to brush it off. These could be forged, she snapped. Frank stood up from the back, cool as a Minnesota January. Everything you see here is official. You can check tomorrow for $10. Then old Harold from the third row spoke up. Raymond Shaw let us use the lake because he was a good man, not because we had any right to it. Another neighbor said she was there the day my dad gave everyone permission. Pete Galloway chimed in with county records. That's when the room flipped. Victoria started yelling about conspiracies, but it was over. I ended it right there. Under Minnesota statute, I'm terminating all permissions for HOA use of Shaw Lake, effective immediately. Frank backed me up, trespassing, plain and simple from now on. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. The next day, Frank and I went on offense. Letters to the HOA, motions to the court to rescind the liens, even a complaint to the Attorney General for fraud and abuse of power. Local news picked up the story. Turns out Victoria had a history of this, forced to resign from her last HOA after a lawsuit. The fallout was quick. 3 board members quit, including the treasurer and the vice president. Even Meredith, Victoria's own daughter, resigned and publicly apologized to me. The petition to remove Victoria gained steam. At the special meeting, the stories poured out, how Victoria had bullied, threatened, and retaliated against anyone who questioned her. When the vote came, nearly 80% said, enough. Victoria walked out without a word, heels tapping like they did that first morning, but this time sounding more like retreat than command. In the weeks that followed, the new board sent me a letter, apologizing, recognizing Shaw Lake as private property, asking, not demanding, if they could lease it for future festivals. $1 a year, all rights clear, everything in writing. That was all I ever wanted, to be asked, not told. I thought about my dad a lot that night, about how he'd loved watching the community come together on our lake. I accepted the lease, with a few conditions, my rights, my sign on the shore, advance notice for any big events. The delayed winter festival was held in late January, smaller, but happier than ever. Sophie tugged my sleeve to say sorry for thinking I was bad. I told her, we all make mistakes. What matters is learning the truth. Next morning, I went back out on the ice, Dad's rod in hand, drilling a hole where it all started. The lake was quiet again, but not lonely. I could hear the echoes of laughter, see the shimmer of old memories in the sunlight, feel my dad's pride in every frozen breath. This was our lake, mine, his, and now, in a way, the community's too, but only because I chose it. If this story hits close to home, I hope you'll share your own, about standing up for what's right, about holding on to what matters. Drop your story in the comments, argue about right and wrong, or just tell me where you're watching from. Because when ordinary folks stand together, even the coldest winter can't keep the truth buried for long.